The longest hour in human history, and it happened off-planet. Imagine being on the verge of crashing into the moon while hearing an unexplainable whistling sound, with no idea whether it's real, coming from the spacecraft, or simply the sound of your own mind melting. Now imagine you're also completely cut off. For nearly an hour. No Earth, no control, no nothing. Welcome to the most chilling blackout ever experienced in space. This happened during the Apollo 10 mission, when astronauts Eugene Cernan, Thomas Stafford, and John Young made history piloting the lunar module Snoopy so close to the surface that they nearly kissed it with their helmets. But of course, this wasn't a Sunday joyride. The moment they lost sight of Earth, radio communications collapsed. The silence was so absolute that only one thought lingered in their heads: the possibility of never coming back. According to Cernan, it was the strangest and most distressing experience he had ever lived through. And that's coming from a man who orbited the moon inside a metallic, powered by fuel and hope. The sound they kept hearing, a kind of eerie whistle, was constant throughout the blackout, as if someone or something was trying to communicate, but not in any human language. Years later, NASA would still be unable to explain the exact origin of the phenomenon. Some say it was the moon itself, acting as a cosmic mirror that distorted the signals. Others, a bit more creative, claim the communication was deliberately cut off because the crew saw something they were never meant to see. A classic space conspiracy move, with a hint of, let's bury this before CNN finds out. Thomas Stafford summed it up bluntly. It was the loneliest experience of his life. So lonely that his mind literally began to wander, like a lost tourist in Tokyo. The pressure of being completely isolated in a deadly environment made him question even his own perception of time. And while the astronauts were sweating inside their capsule, Earth kept spinning, unaware that three men were locked inside with total emptiness, as their only companions separated from nothingness by just a few centimeters of aluminum. The astronaut who saw a snake floating in space, and it wasn't a metaphor. You'd think space is full of logical things, planets, stars, maybe a satellite or two, and mostly just empty. But then along comes Franklin Story Musgrave, the astronaut with more university degrees than half the planet's libraries, and he tells us he saw an 8-meter snake calmly gliding in front of his spacecraft. That's right, a snake. In space. And no, it wasn't a bad dream or some poetic metaphor. It started as a white floating panel, and then turned into something long, flexible, and supposedly rubbery in texture. Totally normal, right? During the STS-61 mission of the space shuttle, Musgrave, aka the professor of space, reported seeing this entity twice. The first time, it looked like a harmless, shiny structure. The second, something far more unsettling. It moved fluidly and had a disturbingly lifelike attitude. The official explanation? Space debris. Of course, because apparently space junk now does interpretive dance. The most disturbing part wasn't just the appearance of the serpentoid, but the fact that it seemed to follow the spacecraft for hours. Musgrave, whose academic resume is scarier than the snake itself, flat out refused to believe it was a random piece of detached metal. He was convinced he had witnessed a form of unknown life, probably made up of amino acids or some other unclassified biocosmic eccentricity. NASA, of course, responded with their usual "thanks for your input, doctor," but no. No public investigation, no official statement, just silence. And not the cool kind you get in space, this one was much closer to home. Because the most awkward part wasn't the floating snake in low orbit, it was that no one wanted to talk about it. After retiring, Musgrave dedicated himself to trying to contact extraterrestrial beings, as if it were the most casual thing in the world. According to him, these civilizations have been circling Earth longer than we've been inventing excuses to stay home. And while his theories were received with a mix of fascination and maybe don't invite Musgrave to dinner, no one has been able to disprove what he saw. Because let's be honest, if the most educated person to ever go to space says he saw a floating snake, maybe it's time to start questioning what we think we know. The day the capsule was chased by something that wasn't supposed to be there. Gordon Cooper was no rookie. Test pilot, aerospace engineer, and one of the first astronauts in history, Cooper had logged more hours in the sky than an insomniac satellite. But nothing prepared him for what he saw during the Mercury 9 mission in 1963, an unidentified craft floating right next to his capsule. And we're not talking about a flicker or a reflection. We're talking about a solid, defined object, and one that seemed genuinely interested in his presence. In his own words, Cooper observed the object for over 10 minutes. He saw it appear, disappear, reappear, and just to add a cosmic cherry on top, move closer to his ship. It followed at short range, keeping a parallel trajectory, like it was evaluating the menu before deciding whether or not to eat him. Cooper, meanwhile, calmly reported the situation to Mission Control with the kind of poise only someone who's seen it all can maintain, except that this actually shocked him. A lot. And if you're thinking it was a space-induced hallucination courtesy of orbital loneliness, think again. The radar picked up the craft too. Yes, whatever it was had physical presence and left technical records. The problem came afterward. NASA, as it had done many times before, went into full "this never happened" mode and deployed the total silence protocol. Cooper, however, wasn't playing along. He kept talking about it until retirement and beyond. In interviews throughout the 80s and 2000s, he not only stood by what he saw, he also stated that the government knew exactly what was going on. According to him, extraterrestrials weren't just visiting us, they had been doing it for centuries. He even went so far as to speculate that some were here to help us. Yes, seriously. Aliens with a planetary volunteer spirit? Wonderful. Despite the criticism, Cooper never retracted a word. He wasn't chasing fame either. He simply told what he saw. A silent, intelligent craft that seemed to be observing and then vanished into space, as if it knew it had already seen enough. And meanwhile, here on Earth, we keep wondering if we're alone while ignoring the possibility that someone long ago may have started watching and is still taking notes. The floating tentacle no one could explain. Leroy Chiao was everything you'd expect from an elite astronaut, chemical engineer, space mission pilot, and commander of the International Space Station. A serious guy, a scientist, with his feet on the ground, except when he was literally floating hundreds of kilometers above it. And it was precisely there, in the absolute stillness of space, that he had one of the most unsettling encounters ever recorded. The appearance of an entity with limbs, hovering near the module as if it were waiting for something. Or worse, as if it already knew everything. During a spacewalk in 2005, Chiao observed a transparent figure with what appeared to be tentacles or movable appendages resting on a metallic structure. The reaction from Mission Control on Earth? A mix of awkward silence and PR-worthy evasions, because nothing says scientific credibility, like ignoring the guy who's literally watching something weird in real time. According to Chiao, the object didn't behave like space debris or a drifting artifact. It had presence, intention. He claimed it seemed to observe, move smoothly, and keep a certain distance, as if it knew exactly how close it could get without triggering alarms. Oh, and it had lights. Because obviously, if you're going to be a strange apparition in space, you'd better glow a little. Of course, NASA never officially confirmed what Chiao said, nor did they deny receiving his report. They simply let the matter fade away among less spine-chilling headlines. But that didn't stop the ex-astronaut, who later took part in conferences on paranormal phenomena and unidentified encounters. What he saw wasn't an optical illusion, or a reflection, or a delusion. It was something that left a mark. Chiao never spoke of invasions or threats, but he made it clear that, for a few moments, he knew he wasn't alone. And that feeling, coming from someone trained to face the absolute void, should really make us think. Because in the end, the real terror isn't what floats in space. It's the idea that we're not the only ones floating out there. Thanks for joining us on Mind-Blown Space, where science and mystery shake hands from orbit. If you're craving more encounters from beyond this world, subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell us, would you be able to keep working if a transparent tentacle peeked through your window? See you soon. Unless we get abducted first.